When taking a look at DC's most famous superheroes, none, in my opinion, have had as hard of a time trying to prove themselves, only second to Aquaman, than that of Green Lantern. Whether discussing Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, or the various others, the character is synonymous with the DC brand, and even though he's a founding member of the Justice League, he's sort of at limbo at the moment. Although, being a hero with a huge mythology to back him up, he hasn't gotten a lot of attention, except for the comics, of course, and some animated movies here and there. Oh, and, of course this little movie that came out in 2011.
Horrible!
Yeah, so even with that abomination of a superhero movie being released in theaters, alongside it, a 3D animated cartoon was released as well, as Green Lantern, the animated series. The series follows the Lantern Hal Jordan, as he and a few other Lanterns go on adventures through the unknown regions of space, dealing with growing threats to the universe, and acting as the last line of defense for known space. This is totally a Saturday morning cartoon, and 9-year-old me thought it kicked ass. So I do have a bit of nostalgia for the show, but I hadn't seen it for years since it last aired back in 2011. But with it having its 10th anniversary, I finally went back and watched it. And I've gotta say, this was much better than I was expecting it to be. Like, the show doesn't do anything spectacular, but for a superhero Saturday morning cartoon, it's great. Now, to get things started, I found the animation quite interesting, since it doesn't look like a lot of other 3D animated shows that I've seen. The closest I'd say is most likely Transformers Prime, but that show has a lot of realistic looking sets and regular proportioned people, compared to here where there's a lot of exaggeration in something like the chests that are pretty jacked and the legs are skinny as hell. Jesus, he needs the Krabby Patty Squidward was eating ASAP. Even the faces seem to have a lot more detail in them than I thought. They're very smooth, but they're still able to give off a lot of different expressions and some good shading on them as well. Even the aliens in the show do this very well, even without them being exactly human. Many of the objects and characters associated with good guys don't seem to have very sharp edges and instead look somewhat blunted, kind of, compared to the villains that have much more sharpened edges and are bulkier than others. Like, the best way I'd say to describe this show is that the characters and objects look like they came straight from toy boxes. But in a good way, not meaning that in a bad way whatsoever. Now, compared to other famous animated series such as Batman the Animated Series, Superman, Justice League, or Justice League Unlimited, the show structure in this has larger overarching stories rather than those other shows where they were more of an anthology, with those episodes having mostly no relation to each other, besides maybe a few details being continued or the occasional multi-part episode. So, this helps us understand the story without the characters or details changing all the time, and it allows us to grow with the characters and see how they change through the series. It was also able to tell smaller stories with the larger narrative in the background. This allows the main characters to go to different worlds, encounter weird aliens, and meet new characters and experiment with different situations. Like, the show goes from having an episode with a living planet becoming a Green Lantern to an alternate universe with steampunks. The creativity is amazing, and for the limited amount of episodes this show has, it does plenty with it. And how it's able to juggle those weird concepts with the main stories being told, while also still making it fun and exciting. Additionally, I love how this show sets up different situations for the characters to get through. Best example of this is, in my opinion, episode 21, Babel, where the characters lose power in their rings, and not only lose their ability to create constructs and fly, but also to understand one another, and they have to get out of their situation while communicating other ways than just talking. It leads to some pretty funny moments.
That's not gonna happen. Guys, can you help me explain here? That's not what I had in mind.
Speaking of the characters, the show chooses to have a small crew of 4 to follow, which makes it easier to get attached to them since they have more screen time and development, and it can be easily split between the 4. Of course, there's Hal Jordan, who's the headstrong, fearless leader who gets one-liners for every situation, but is pretty much your standard main character. Kilowog, who's the tough, strong sergeant, acts as a moral compass at times, while as comedic relief at certain points.
What? This is a shot at real action.
I'm happy here, molding, guiding, and nurturing young recruits so they realize their potential. The way, they're like my children. You useless, stumbling piece of stinking unsplat! You go over, not under! Do it again!
But the more unique characters are the ones who stand out, and those being Razor and Aya. Now, Razor at first comes off as that edgy, tortured character that most teen edgelords would love to be. But as the story goes along, he becomes the show's strongest character, going through an arc of trying to purge himself of the rage that hurts him more than anything, and learning to become a Blue Lantern. It was nice to get a character like him, who wasn't exactly a total good guy, but was relearning to be a good person again. Then there's Aya, who's the nav computer of the ship and the brains of the group. Again, at first there isn't much to her, but later towards the end of the Red Lantern arc, there's more given to her character, and once the Manhunters are thrown in and made a new threat, she's given conflicting emotions, even as a machine, and eventually that leads her to becoming the main threat for the finale. Both her and Razor were honestly great characters who were able to get some nice arcs in the show, even with it having such a small time span. I just like the fact that it's not just a bunch of Green Lanterns, but instead different kinds of characters that feel natural to the story and provide a lot to the overall series. What I also noticed was that there wasn't a lot of comedy throughout the series. Like, of course there's the occasional joke or one-liner, but not all the time, which helped give levity to a lot of the serious situations that go on. But I guess just watching MCU films this whole time has tainted my perception of comedy now. Oh, and the villains? They're pretty great too. I'm happy that the main threats in the show are something different and aren't just Yellow Lanterns again, since they've always seemed like an evil palette swap of Green Lanterns to me. And although the Red Lanterns are a lot like that, they are at least given a backstory as how they came to be and why they do the things they do. Not to mention, having a legitimately good reason to kill the Guardians. That involves a whole invasion rather than them just straight up going to Oa just to kill them since they don't like them or something. I mean, they even team up with the Green Lanterns down the line, so that's even more depth than I was expecting from a show like this. I also didn't think the show would go out of its way to use a character like the Anti-Monitor as a threat, or actually go and use the Manhunters. Characters DC has not given a lot of attention to, which raises the stakes even further for the show and gives the good guys a formidable challenge to go up against, while also doing a bit of world building at the same time. Then taking that a bit further with having an emotional tie thrown into the mix once Aya is made the villain, goes rogue, and tries to end all life in the universe. Yeah, the show gets a little insane towards the end. Which brings me to the few issues I had with it. Firstly, the action wasn't amazing at points, where it just kind of boils down to characters just shooting lasers or punching each other, instead of using their power rings to make constructs. Like, this is more of an issue with how Green Lantern is used outside of the comics and the idea of him, rather than the show itself. But would it have killed the creators to give him something like a sword, a pistol, a crossbow, a cannon, a battering ram, a ballista, an axe, rope dart, a dragon, fighter jets, giant drills, giant boxing gloves, a spear, or something else? I mean, the movie has him make a multitude of different constructs, more so than this. And that's not a good thing. I don't want to be saying praises for that movie. Secondly, the introduction of time travel, mostly in the last 2 episodes, I thought was a little much, since that kind of created some plot holes. Like, if the Anti-Monitor was having a hard time killing the Lanterns, why didn't he just go back in time and kill them when they least expected? And if sentient life was causing problems for him, why didn't he just go stop creation from happening itself? I mean, Aya does that in the finale, but then would this be like Back to the Future time travel, where you need to be really cautious about the stuff that you do? Or more like Avengers Endgame, where messing up the past doesn't mean jack shit in the present? The time travel just made stuff needlessly complicated with its incorporation, and the stakes were already high as they were, both emotionally and threat level wise, so it made even less sense. And lastly, to me, there should have been a little bit more characterization for Hal. Like, I totally get he's a hotshot who's not afraid of danger and cares for those around him, and that's totally in line with the Saturday morning cartoon hero, but there wasn't really anything else to help give him more of a personality outside of that. I get the show was only 26 episodes, but even in the Justice League animated series, Jon Stewart was given way more characterization, and you were able to get who he was, even in the first 4 episodes of the show. Not to mention, this was also in a show that had time split between different characters, and not just solely based around Jon. And before someone says something like, "It's an animated TV show meant for children, it's not supposed to have major character development," just know that Batman the Animated Series was also intended and made for children, but was also able to have amazing scenes of character like this.
I wish there were another way for me to say it. I cannot. I can only beg your forgiveness and pray you'll hear me somehow. Someplace where a warm hand waits for mine.
But now you're probably wondering, why did the show only get 26 episodes? Well, sadly, it's because the show was canceled. But not because of the show itself and its ratings. Oh, no. The true culprit was none other than... Yeah, since the film was doing pretty poorly at the box office and was getting bombed hard by critics and audiences, no one gave a shit about Green Lantern, and in turn the merchandise and toy sales were doing extremely poorly. Hell, the show itself didn't even get toys produced, so with that, only 26 episodes were ordered for Season 1, and Season 2 would never be a thing. This great show, that had a lot of creativity and talent put into it, was canceled because of a shitty movie not pushing enough merchandise.
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way. I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
And since then, Green Lantern hasn't gotten another TV show or movie. Hell, he hasn't even made his live-action debut in the DCEU as of now, and pretty much just makes appearances in other animated shows, or is just made like the small side character or something. Though there is reportedly a Green Lantern horror movie in development with Jon Stewart set to make his first live-action debut, but as of now, Green Lantern has pretty much just been left in the dust. So when going back and checking this show out, I was a little saddened by how forgotten it was, how not many people mentioned it like all of DC's other shows like Batman the Animated Series or Justice League Unlimited. And although I would not put this show anywhere close to the same league as those ones, I think it deserves to be remembered as a good show that helped give the spotlight to one of DC's most popular and underutilized superheroes. Like, honestly, how many people know that the Orange Lanterns are actually a thing, or what Manhunters are? So with that, I'm giving Green Lantern the Animated Series an 8 out of 10, because of how well it holds up, and for how I think it's a great example of what a Saturday morning cartoon is. As sad as it is that this only lasted one season, I'm happy that it was as good as it was and that we were able to get a somewhat conclusive ending, unlike other cancelled shows that never got that. And hopefully the Green Lantern will be given another shot someday, to finally get another TV show or film that shows how damn cool he can be.